Featured review time. And last week we were a little preoccupied giving our congratulatory pats on the back, doing our own award show. And we missed like Zach's most anticipated movie of the summer. So instead of reviewing Deadpool and Wolverine as a whole group, we're reviewing Twisters as a whole group today. So if we're doing that, there's only one person that can start us off, and that's Zach. So Zach, tell us all about Twisters, and if you
All
chased it,
right.
you felt it.
The greatest moment in Twisters occurred 6 months ago when I was watching a little thing called the Super Bowl, and they had a trailer for Twisters during the Super Bowl, and it was like the best non-Patrick Mahomes related moment of that great, glorious day. Twisters is the long-awaited, by at least 1/3 of this podcast, sequel to the 1996 and 2021 deep dive classic Yandy Bond Twister, starring our greatest actor of all time, Bill Paxton, and Helen Hunt. And I gotta say, I was definitely chasing this movie. I was definitely feeling this movie. I felt going into this movie that there's no possible way it could have disappointed, because I just loved the first Twister so much. I guess I didn't realize that this movie kind of would suck, which it does. Okay, here I'm just going to go straight into it. I think the first problem is Daisy Edgar-Jones. I'm not really familiar with this actress too much. I know she was in the Crawdads movie that we all hated. She's not very believable in this movie. She's basically the Helen Hunt character. She has trauma in the first 5 minutes. And then we go into her backstory, which we just do not care about at all. I'd hate to pick on actors like this. There was not a second of this movie that I believed that she was a scientist and a Twister researcher. It just was a totally miscast role. Helen Hunt was very believable, I thought, as Dr. Joe Harding. But yes, so she's trying to resume her life, heal her trauma when she's cast back into Oklahoma by her old friend Anthony Ramos, who's almost like the Matt Damon in this movie. I'm not really sure what he's doing in this movie, but whatever. Then we get to the best part of the movie, which is Glen Powell. And Glen Powell, I think, tries really hard in this movie to be some sort of mixture between Philip Seymour Hoffman in the original and basically every single Glen Powell role to date. And I think he's really funny. The problem, I guess, with the movie is that I wish the whole movie had just been about him and his crew. And I think his crew is fantastic. I loved seeing Tunde Adebimpe back, a.k.a. Sydney from Rachel Getting Married. He's awesome in the movie. How about shout out to Sasha Lane? I mean, Todd knows. Put Sasha Lane in a movie about the Midwest. Maybe she's selling magazines. I don't know, but I'm there for it. I loved his crew. And I got to say, as someone who has gone through tornadoes pretty much every year since I lived here, I turn on people like Glen Powell, okay? I turn on Tyler Owens on YouTube, and I follow these guys, and Tyler Owens is like, that is accurate. There are definitely people that go out into tornadoes, not for any scientific purpose or whatsoever, but to get the hits. And so watching this movie, which just has this very lame premise about how Daisy Edgar-Jones gradually starts falling in love with Glen Powell, and oh gosh, are they going to put Dorothy into the whole thing? I just thought, and this is again coming off of the 2009 Pinos, I thought, what a missed opportunity. This movie really could have been a more, I guess, maybe comic, but also like mass summer blockbuster version of The Hurt Locker. Okay, we really could have had Glen Powell as basically Jeremy Renner in The Hurt Locker, this guy who is totally reckless, doesn't care about anyone but himself, just wants the hits, just wants the views. And then we get Daisy Edgar-Jones maybe as the Anthony Mackie character, who is the more, cautious one, the more serious the one who's going to chastise him for being too reckless. But the movie doesn't really ever get into that, and it's really disappointing. I also got to say, this is like beat for beat, exactly like Twister in a way that isn't familiar. It isn't fun familiar. It's like Home Alone 2 familiar. It's like, oh, instead of Joe Pesci or instead of the old man next door, we have the bird lady. It's like, oh, okay, instead of Aunt Meg, we have Maura Tierney. And instead of Jonas and the corporate sellouts, we have the guy who's trying to rip people off of their property that they've lost during the storm. And I also have to say, as someone who lives in Kansas, I thought this movie was really, really disrespectful. Now, granted, it's disrespectful to people in Oklahoma, which we all know is the 2009 Pinot Award winner for biggest douchebags. So screw the people of Oklahoma. Well, I think Iowa was second place to Oklahoma. But I think at this point, if there's a tornado warning out, and let me just tell you this because I have authentic experience. If there's a tornado warning, you don't go play baseball. You don't go to a movie theater. You don't go to a farmer's market, okay? That is ridiculous. In the original Twister, they had the good sense to show the town of Waukeeta getting leveled. The only scene where people were out was when they were at the drive-in screening of The Shining. I think this movie is totally unrealistic. I'm not even sure what Dorothy is trying to do in this movie or what the scientific purpose of this whole expedition is. I'm going to be like Terry giving Deadpool 3.5 stars. I'm going to give this one a very generous 2.5 stars because Glen Powell is a great character in this movie. I love the scenes that he was in. He brought a great deal of energy to it. I love the whole crew. R.I.P. Philip Seymour Hoffman, R.I.P. Bill Paxton. Let's get Todd Field, director of Tar, back in this movie. That crew was great, and I loved every scene with them. But the rest of the movie, yikes. I'm sure I'm most curious to know if Todd liked this movie better or worse than Deadpool 2. I'm not sure that's the real question mark, but this qualifies as a disappointment, and I want to go. I want to go back the excitement that I felt watching that Super Bowl commercial. I'm a little disappointed.
All right, well he called you out, Todd. What do you think?
Okay, well, I mean, so you say Daisy Edgar-Jones doesn't work. Like, I cannot tell her apart from Mackenzie Davis. So every time I saw this trailer, I was like, oh, it's Mackenzie Davis, the girl from, what was that? *Halt and Catch Fire*. And I was like, no, it's actually this other girl. But then I keep seeing the James McAvoy trailer, and I'm like, oh, it's the girl from Twisters. It's like, no, that's Mackenzie Davis. I don't know. They look exactly alike, but I mean, they're the same person. This movie reminds me a lot of Too Fast, Too Furious. It's ridiculous. It's a very popcorny sequel. It's got a lot of colorful characters. It's basically a remake with better special effects and less interesting characters. And that is what I thought the entire time watching this. The story is not believable, and it paints Glen Powell as the villain, like, or at least initially. He's supposed to be the Cary Elwes character, essentially, is what I gathered. But he's Glen Powell. It's like, he can't be a fully fleshed out antagonist because he's Glen Powell. It's like, oh, isn't he likable? Isn't he Tom Cruise? Isn't he like our best new movie star? No, he's not. But he can't be a truly interesting character. Exactly. He can't be a truly interesting character because he's Glen Powell and he's guarding his image too much. I cannot stand him, and I cannot stand how everyone's trying to make him the next thing because he's not. But I also, like Zach, don't understand the obsession with like trying to help these towns like getting taken out by the tornadoes, because like these are Midwestern towns and apparently they're just filled with stupid people. Like, these towns, I guess, have 2 or 3 major tornadoes a week. You would think that they would know what to do. They're not going to stand out in the middle of the street and need somebody to grab their arm and pull them inside. I mean, because that's all they're doing in this movie. I don't get it. Like, I mean, how horrible do you think these people are?
Let's go to the rodeo. The tornado warning. Yeah, that's what everyone does here.
Yes, exactly. And even in the worst one, it's like there were still people that were just like watching it, like as it was coming straight toward them in the middle of the street. Like, oh, good job, guys. I just think the movie's uninteresting. It's kind of well directed. It's not. I don't think it's nearly as bad as the first one. I think the first one's a terrible movie, one of the worst movies that we ever deep dove. But the ceiling is pretty low when you're dealing with really dumb material. They try to make this like Top Gun Maverick in terms of like a legacy sequel, but instead it's just like a 90s movie with updated technology and kind of a lame love story. I guess I'm being generous with my 2 stars here again, but 2 stars for this. I mean, it's just marginally better than the first one, but I mean, I can't see how people are going to think that this is actually an improvement.
All right. We got 2.5 stars from Zach, 2 stars from Todd. I'm at 3.5 stars. I love this movie.
There we go.
This
you didn't even like the first one.
I know, but like this is what a summer blockbuster is supposed to be.
You're a fan of Glen
summer
Powell.
Blockbuster popcorn movie. Well, but I've been really critical of some of the stuff Glen Powell's been doing. This is the version of Glen Powell that works. This is the version of Glen Powell that can be a movie star. He's basically Hangman. that's what makes it work. Like he's this cocky, got Southern hick, and he's got this charisma to him, and that's what makes him work. Everything else he's been trying to do, like I watched Anyone But You, like within the last week or so.
Oh, that was a mistake.
Oh my word! You got what happened? Like every it, like figured out a way to rip every ounce of like any sort of like star power either of those two leads had out of it. Hitman he has his moments, but he's best when he's not being himself. This is where he shines, is in a role like this, and it's what everyone saw in him in Top Gun Maverick. This is the best summer blockbuster since Top Gun Maverick. This is what they're supposed to be. Just turn your brain off, have some fun at the movies.
Better than Barbie?
And Barbie was more than...
Barbie was a 4-star movie from you.
Barbie was a 4-star
movie. That was
Barbie
just a crazy statement, Terry.
That doesn't necessarily... Well, it's... all right,
put that on the banner.
Let me say
Best
it this
summer
way.
blockbusters.
It's the closest thing to Top Gun Maverick since Top Gun Maverick. In just the adrenaline thrill ride that an summer action movie can be. And I've heard the criticisms of Daisy Edgar-Jones. I mean, she was... You're right. She's playing the Helen Hunt character. She especially showed off her Helen Hunt acting chops and the fact that her accent kept on slipping in and out. No one really cared about it when Helen Hunt did it, so why is anyone going to care about it when Daisy Edgar-Jones does it?
I mean, she'll win an Oscar next year.
Yeah, exactly. She'll win an Oscar next year for it. Yeah, I thought she was fine. She worked perfectly fine. I don't know. I was just having a blast with this movie, and this is like I said, this is what the fun action blockbuster is supposed to be. Yeah, it felt like a movie from the 90s. Maybe that's because the 90s knew how to do summer blockbusters when they weren't Marvel movies. 3.5 stars.
The guy just gave 3.5 stars to the...
Yeah, well, because now those are the only like good action blockbusters are superhero movies. They're the only ones that have any sort of quality to it. Like, this is a throwback to something great, just like Top Gun Maverick was.
I don't know. I mean, I think Thelma was pretty awesome. That was an action movie for sure.
Well, Thelma was pretty awesome.
I have a real hard time. It's been a few days since I've seen it. I have a disturbingly hard time remembering a whole lot from Twisters. I remember the opening sequence. I remember the tornado at the end of the movie. First of all, I want to push back. I don't think the special effects are that great in this movie. I actually am, I guess, given the context of the era, I'm more impressed by the special effects in the original Twister than I am in this movie. I don't think this movie has any sort of substantive improvement over it. The story in this movie is so lame. I don't know why these people are out there doing this, except for Glen Powell. His storyline makes sense, except, of course, he does have some sort of scientific background in Twisters, of course. But, that's really painfully uninteresting to me and kind of weakens the character in a way. Like, this movie is very, I would say, Chat GPT-esque. Like, throw in a ChatGPT, give me the screenplay to a sequel to Twisters, and this is what probably pops out. I was remarkably not moved by a lot in this movie, and the only reason I'm being generous to it is because of Glen Powell, and really because of Sasha Lane, because she's awesome. She needs to be in more movies. But I think both of you are off base in this one, but I can also see both of your points to some degree.
I think you're blinded by your love of the first one to really appreciate the second one.
That there's nothing original in this movie. Like, what risk did this filmmaker take? And tell me that the first 30 minutes didn't put you to sleep. Until Glen Powell's in this movie, no. It was a chore having to sit through this movie.
Because you were just waiting for the line you wanted to hear the whole time. I mean, this is directed by a 2-time Oscar nominated director. I don't really see it in this. I mean, he obviously has an affinity for that area, I guess, but I don't get it. I'm probably being too high on it at 2 stars. I really did not enjoy this movie, but it's not as reprehensible as the first one. I mean, 2 of the worst actors of the 90s in it. So this does not have that.
Two of the
Wow,
worst
shots fired
actors
at
in the
Philip
90s.
Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah, and Todd Field, come on.
Exactly.
He was great in Eyes Wide
What,
Shut.
yeah. So which of these actors is going to end up being the director of Zach's #2 of all time in the future? That's what I want to know.
Ooh.
I think I'm going to go with Kiernan Shipka. You know, I could see it. Sally Draper to directing an all-time classic. I like Todd's. I actually thought Kiernan Shipka was the main character in this movie from the trailers. I didn't
actually thought Kiernan Shipka was McKenna Grace.
Well, there we go.
Well, because you haven't
Conspiracy
watched
theory.
all of Mad Men.
Yeah.
You can't see that face without thinking of Sally.
She looked like McKenna Grace does in the new Ghostbusters movies. Also, shout out to Katie O'Brien for popping up in a second.
Love Lies Bleeding.
From
where was she?
She was the girl with the really short hair in the crew in Glen Powell's crew.
Wow, I did not catch that.
The first, I want to push back on what Todd said. The first movie is a great movie. Now, I will say great in quotation marks because it's not a great movie like, you know, The English Patient or Breaking the Waves, okay? It's a great movie in that it's in what Terry was talking about. It's a great summer blockbuster movie. And I think I actually watched it. Maybe my mistake also was watching it again this week for the 4,000th time. But that movie, I think, holds up remarkably well in its stupidity, but also it's like joyful stupidity. And it's gleeful stupidity. And I love silly, I love stupid. Where's that soundbite? That Twister personifies that. And this movie, I think, I love stupid. It took itself too seriously to really be, compared to that. But like, I don't know. It just needed to veer in a more serious direction with the Glen Powell character, or just be a laugh out loud hilarious like the original Twister. Not the original Twister that killed Joe's father in the opening sequence, but the movie Twister. That was a bad joke.
Yes, it was. All right. Well, Todd's giving it 2 stars. Zach's giving it 2.5. I'm giving it 3.5. If you haven't seen Twisters yet, before Deadpool and Wolverine takes all of its screen times, go check it out in the theaters, and have some fun. All right.